How are you? Nice to see you. It is Thursday, 12 o'clock Eastern Time, 9 o'clock a.m. Pacific, and it is tea time with Vanessa. I am so glad to have you here, and I'm really enjoying these tea times because there's always a lot going on in my mind and throughout my week. So I love being able to spend a little bit more time with you as opposed to like short videos. So I also want to make sure that as we come into this tea time, I want to share what's going on. I want to share with you how I'm feeling, what lessons I'm learning so that I can also give you tips and then also just help you feel like you're not alone so that we can just chill. My whole theory is that if you were across the table from me having tea, and here's my tea today, that this is exactly what we would be talking about. So nice to see you, and I'm so happy that you're here. Today's tea, I don't usually do tea bags, but the really nice thing about tea bags is that you get little sayings on a lot of them. So today's saying on my tea bag is, when you become part of the universe becomes part of you, which is just so beautiful. So I have a little calming tea today. My nervous system is feeling a little unsettled today, so I'm really focusing on just breathing and really watching what I'm consuming. And my tea is also just a calming tea. So hello. But what I wanted to chat about today, so kind of where I'm at in the world, I'm really feeling a lot of change coming on. And I'm not really sure where it's taking me or what my next step is. But there's also this beauty in just sitting in the discomfort and surrendering to that next step when it comes and trusting that it will all come in divine timing. And so I'm kind of sitting on that discomfort right now. And I want you to know, even though I'm a mindset and business coach, I don't always have all of the answers. Nobody does. So if you're sitting at home thinking like, I don't know what my next step is and I don't know what to do, tune in. My tip is just tune into you. Keep following your joy, keep finding your light, and then find a lot of stillness, because it's in that stillness, I know, at least for me, when I'm feeling like I want more clarity on my next steps, I have to trust that it's all going to happen. I have to lean into the discomfort and realize it's okay not to know. It's okay to be uncomfortable and in the uncertainty. And I also need a lot more stillness, because it's in that stillness that I can hear the little nudges. I can feel those nudges so that I do know my next best step when it is time. So I hope that resonates with you. If you're feeling like you have a lot of shifts and changes happening, I do too. I don't, maybe it's the seasons and or just everything coming back to life out of COVID and everything changing. I just am really feeling that. So I'm leaning into it, feeling a little uncomfortable. And it's okay if you are too. I also wanted to share today a little bit more about my story, because I truly believe that even though, okay, let me be completely honest with you, my human, when I'm in my insecurities and in my fear, my human doesn't really like people. My human can be very introverted, needs a lot of alone time, and has had a lot of, I guess you could say, trauma around other people and being around other people, because we've all had experiences with people where they're projecting their own trauma onto us. They're projecting their own stuff onto us and not coming to the situation with love and compassion, but they're doing the best that they can. And I really, even a few weeks ago, I consider myself spiritual. I believe in God, but maybe my version of God isn't the same as yours, and that's okay too. But in the Bible, when Jesus is being crucified, he talks about forgive them, for they do not know what they do. And a couple of weeks ago, I just kind of wrote in my journal a little bit of a different, love them, for they do not know what they do. And when I'm in my highest self, when I'm in my best self, and when I'm in love and peace, I can really love people. But I also know that when I'm in my human and in my fear, it is harder to love. But part of my journey and what I share with others is me continuing to find my light and be in my light so that I can continue to show up as my highest self. And I do that for myself. I do that for my clients. And I got a really interesting message from one of my clients last week saying, well, you always seem like you're in alignment. And I just want to tell you that even though maybe it seems that way, maybe it doesn't. Alignment and connecting to your highest self is a practice, is a daily practice. And so it's finding the right tools and routines for you to continue to connect to your highest self. And if you need some more routines and tools, let me know. Happy to support you. But it is a daily practice. Just like you can't eat all of the food for your entire lifetime in one day, you can't shower once and then never shower again. Your alignment and connecting to your highest self is a daily practice. And there will still be moments where the fear comes in, the insecurities come up, the trauma and the core wounds come up because we're human. But as we get more comfortable sitting in that, we can feel through the emotions easier. We'll move through them faster, and we can also start to observe them as opposed to becoming absorbed by them. And so I share this because I want to share with you a little bit about my story today and just remind you, if you don't want to listen to my whole story, that's okay too, but just reminding you that we come here as humans because we love people. And I know that's kind of a spiritual thing. It's something that my mentor said to me, and I truly believe that. And there's also the saying of, if there isn't a person you wouldn't love if you knew their story. And we all have stories. We all have traumas. I'll give you a quick one more example. This past week, I was talking to someone in the community, and I know sometimes online it can be hard to interpret people's comments and interpretations. And I had just talked to her a little bit about how some of her comments are hurting others just because of the bluntness, and they seem to be judgmental and like right or wrong. Like this is right and this is wrong, and what you're thinking is right or wrong. And so in that, we just had this discussion, and it was so interesting because I knew this would be the case, but in speaking to her, she started to share her story with me. And I truly believe that in her story, in her comments, she's trying to help people and share her experiences and share what she's been through in order to help others. Right? And there is such a fine line of being in our stories and our experiences, and then also watching how those experiences impact our relationship and our lives. Because I was listening to Joe Dispenza this past weekend, and he was talking about, 95% of our everyday actions and reactions and thoughts and emotions are based on past experiences. They're based on the familiar. And the brain always wants to repeat familiar things because it is safe. And we're just on this autopilot, and we just keep going. And so in order for us to change, in order for us to get out of autopilot, we really have to start questioning, why do we think this? What else do I want to create? And start visualizing and stepping into our highest self so that the alternative emotion and being also becomes familiar. Every day, I tap into my highest self and what she feels like, what she thinks, how she dresses, how she feels, and how she acts and how she talks, because I want that to be super familiar so that when I get caught in a fear or a core wound, I can come back to my highest self faster. And also because I get familiar with my highest self, when I'm not in her, I catch it faster. So my recommendation to you is to get really clear with, what is your highest self? How does that feel? What does that look like? So anyways, let me share with you a little bit about my story if you don't know. So I grew up in Canada. I know a lot of the people on here from all over the world, which is so fun. So hello. And, we can have a whole discussion about Canada versus like other countries and what I've experienced just traveling. But, I love Canada. It's super multicultural and is peaceful. And however, growing up in school, The Canada part, it's not important for right now. But growing up in school and high school and university, I loved school. I loved doing well because I was praised for it. And this also starts to connect. I'll share with you basically all my core wounds today, because then it starts to connect. If I did well and I was a good girl, I was praised by my teachers, by my family. So I really loved being the good girl. I loved doing well in school. I loved showing up in that way. And I also found that in school, I never really liked small talk. I have always been kind of an old soul and loved really deep conversations. And so I found making friendships a little bit difficult. I also didn't necessarily find female friendships to be particularly easy to make, because as women, and any other women listening to this, I'm sure you can relate. Our relationships as females, I think, are being called to change, because growing up, gossip and judgment and comparison is very prevalent in the female world. And I get it. Some of it's genetic, because we, in the olden days, had to actually compete for a man's attention to survive, right? The gossiping made us feel accepted. And I even grew up in a family where gossip and judgment was very rooted in our generational traumas and activity as well. And so that always made me feel like I fit in. But then I also didn't. It didn't feel good, and it didn't feel right for me. And so growing up, I kind of always felt different. I didn't always feel like I belonged. I just felt like there was something more at such a young age. And I didn't really enjoy similar things to children. Like, I loved being at the adult table. I loved sitting at the adult table and not the children's table, right? Like, there were always just little different things. But I say that because I also think that a lot of us feel different. A lot of us feel like we don't fit in, and that there is something more. And I think that now I know that that's kind of a normal feeling. But when growing up, I also lost my mom at age 18. And she was my best friend. She died of breast cancer, and it was really difficult. It also put a lot of tension and pressure, like, within the family. And when looking back and even comparing my childhood to my boyfriend's childhood, for example, there's a lot that I didn't experience, because I also felt as a child that I needed to be good because my mom was sick. And my mom was sick with cancer most of my life. She had cancer when I was 4 originally, and then went into remission, and then got cancer again, and then passed away. So I didn't want to ruffle the feathers, in the house. And I just wanted to be good to not cause my mom extra stress. But in going through that, I mean, heck, I could probably talk about my story for a long time. So I'm just trying to give highlights, because it's in these highlights that we know that we're not alone. We can understand each other. And I'll just continue to share these stories as we continue to evolve and grow. And so I went to university. I did all that stuff. After university, same thing. Like, I really felt like we live on this conveyor belt of, okay, you're supposed to go to school, go to university, get a good job, find a mate, get married, and have a child, and buy a home. And this whole conveyor belt and all the things that I should be doing just never felt right to me. When I was in business school, and actually, funny enough, I'm wearing my business school sweatshirt right now. When I was in business school, I didn't want to do recruiting like everybody else. I didn't necessarily want the same job that everybody else wanted. And I just kind of felt like I had jumped off that conveyor belt, and I was just watching everybody else on it, thinking, well, what's next for me? What do I want my life to look like? So I ended up working for a smaller firm, doing coaching and consulting and team building, which is kind of what led me to here. And I've been in leadership a lot throughout my entire life in, student councils and all that sort of stuff. But when when I decided, well, I don't want to be on the conveyor belt, I want something different than what society is telling me I want, it took a lot of focus and intention to decide what I actually wanted my life to look like. What do I want my relationships to look like? My romantic relationships. What do I want it to look like to be a mom and to build a career? So early on, I was very aware of, I don't want what's being told of me. So now I kind of have to create it. And I didn't have people that I could necessarily look up to. My dad was an entrepreneur, so that was really nice to see the entrepreneurial world, but I didn't have a lot of people to look up to think, oh, I want a relationship like that. I want a career like that. And so many of the people in coaching and self-development and mindset were also men. So something that I struggled with was finding that balance of how do you show up in an authentic way, in a feminine way, and not have to be pushy and aggressive. And that whole like masculine feminine dynamic was also something that I could probably talk an hour about, but that also came to me. So it was a lot of discovery of what I want that to look like. And so if you are sitting there thinking you don't want what other people have and you want something different but don't know what that is, just keep asking yourself, like, how do I want to feel? That's the biggest question that I would always ask myself. How do I want it to feel? How do I want to feel in that situation? And so then it kind of led me to where I am today, doing mindset and business training. And I also, in building my community, started a community called the Ladies Community. And that kind of adapted where I was single in the city as an entrepreneur. I felt really lonely. All my friends were getting married and having kids, and I wanted to find people to do things with. I wanted to find other like-minded people to connect with. And so I kind of started events, and over time, they just continued to grow. And I share that with you because it happened by accident. And so I want, if you're kind of in this place of not knowing your next step, just know that even throughout my entire career, everything has just been taking the next best step, and then something builds from there. And I also want to, I don't know who this is for, maybe it's for me, give you permission for things to change and evolve. So for example, when I started the Ladies Community, I was single, living in the city, had very different intentions of like what I wanted in my life. I wanted to go out. I wanted to meet people. I had a lot of energy for social, and maybe it was because I was single and I wanted to meet more people. And now post COVID, and now my business looks different. My relationship status is different. I'm not living in the city. I want to give you permission that just because something felt right at the time doesn't mean you have to stay there. Things continue to evolve just like you evolve. And that's why even in sharing my story and kind of talking briefly about friendships, I've often questioned, what does it mean to be friends, and what role do friendships hold in our lives? And yeah, there isn't a person we wouldn't love if we didn't know their story. There isn't a person we wouldn't love if we knew their story. But as well, things change and things evolve. So give your career, give people the permission to evolve. Just allow it to evolve, allow it to change, and allow yourself to grow without judgment for yourself or anybody else, because we don't know anybody else's journey. We just have to keep taking the next best step, and we can't judge how we show up or what that looks like in our relationships with other people as we continue to grow and evolve. Does that make sense? Maybe I find sometimes on my tea times, I will rant about different things because it's just, it all kind of connects and are things that I'm thinking about. And yeah, so I have been thinking a lot about friendships and what that means. I've been thinking a lot about how things evolve and change over time, and just continuing to follow that next step. And also just thinking about what my next step is. And I'm sharing this with you because so often on social, you look at posts and you look at somebody else being an expert in something. And yes, I spend every day on business and mindset. It is my obsession. It is my passion. It is what I love. But it doesn't mean that we aren't going through our own things and that we are not perfect and we are not godlike. And whenever we put somebody on a pedestal, it's just no good for anybody. And so I just want to be here with you, showing you who I am and my vulnerability in what I'm going through, so you don't feel alone and you know that we're all just human, kind of going through our own thing. So I think that's all for today, tea time with Vanessa. I hope you enjoyed hearing some of my story. I know I kind of went through it in little chunks, but that's kind of the gist of where I'm at. And yeah, so now, I mean, I don't live in the city. I have a boyfriend. I mean, we're kind of thinking maybe we'll have a baby soon. Not sure. We'll see. But I'll keep you posted on that as well. And I'll just continue to keep you updated on what's going on with me, because we're friends now and you're here and I really appreciate you being here. So sending you so much love. I hope you have a beautiful day. See you later, friend. I will chat with you soon.